Welcome to Colorado LTAP Tuesday Tailgate Talk. Today we will be discussing hazmat safety, or actually named hazardous material safety. Why is this subject important? We encounter substances, gas, and materials every day that can be classified as hazardous. So, what can we do to keep our workplaces safe and keep yourselves and crews safe? Let's talk about it. Hazmat is an abbreviation for hazardous materials, substances in quantities or forms that may pose a reasonable risk to health, property, or the environment. Hazmats include such substances as toxic chemicals, fuels, nuclear waste products, and biological chemical, and radiological agents. What are chemical hazards and toxic substances? Chemical hazards and toxic substances pose a wide range of health hazards such as irritation, sensitization, and carcinogenicity, and physical hazards such as flammability, corrosion, and explosibility. In order to ensure chemical safety in the workplace, information about the identities and hazards of the chemicals must be available and understandable to workers. OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard, HCS, requires the development and dissemination of such information. Chemical manufacturers and importers are required to evaluate the hazards of the chemicals they produce or import and prepare labels and safety data sheets to convey the hazard information to their downstream customers. All employers with hazardous chemicals in their workplace must have labels and safety data sheets for their exposed workers and train them to handle the chemicals appropriately. The training for employees must also include information on the hazards of the chemicals in their work area and the measures to be used to protect themselves. Most shops have a fire cabinet where you put your flammable items to ensure they are not exposed to spark or an open flame. But what other chemicals do you have around the shop that can be considered hazmat? The volume of the chemicals may not amount to being officially hazmat, but I would bet that you have a material safety data sheet, also known as an MSDS, on all the chemicals you have in the workplace. Are you storing them correctly, or do you even know where the sheets are? You can get most sheets online from the manufacturer. The companies I have worked for had a binder that was in a central location for everyone's access. Do you have a book or know where that book is? So let's discuss the MSDS in a little detail. A material safety data sheet, MSDS, is a document that contains information on the potential hazards, such as health, fire, reactivity, and environmental, and how to work safely with the chemical product. It is an essential starting point for the development of a complete health and safety program. The MSDS lists the hazardous ingredients of a product, its physical and chemical characteristics such as flammability or explosive properties, its effect on human health, the chemicals with which it can adversely react, handling precautions, the types of measures that can be used to control exposure, emergency and first aid procedures, and methods to contain a spill. When new regulatory information, such as exposure limits or new health effects information, becomes available, the MSDS must be updated to reflect it. One thing to remember, they all hold the same information but can look different from company to company. It should also be noted that MSDSs are only required for hazardous chemicals. So let's dig a little deeper. So on most MSDS sheets, you have several sections of information that are important, which we will discuss. The first section is identification, if the substance or mixture, and of the company or undertaking. Here we have some important information. It will have the product identifier with the product name and synonyms. Next, we have relevant identified users of the substance or mixture and uses advised against. This explains what it is, such as batteries for automotive. Next, we have details of the supplier of the safety data sheet. This is the supplier of the product you have. The last part of the section 1 is emergency telephone numbers. This emergency telephone has to be manned 24/7, 365. No matter the location of the spill, this phone number has to answer to help the individuals who need to clean it up. Section 2 is hazards identification, or it could be called composition information on ingredients. This section has the principal hazardous components. This is the chemical and the common name. It has the hazard category along with percentage. Plus, it also has the amount that it becomes hazardous. There will be notes below if needed. The common name will be on the label of the product and it gives you the chemical family. Section 3 of the MSDS is the hazard identification, is chocked full of information. It has the signs and symptoms of exposure, subchronic and chronic health effects, medical conditions generally aggravated with exposure, routes of entry such as inhalation or ingestion, and then they have chemicals listed as carcinogen or potential carcinogen. Section 4 is the first aid measures. You see here that it covers inhalation, eyes, skin, and ingestion. This explains how to clean or what not to clean with. Or maybe you need to know if you can induce vomiting, but this will tell you if it's good or bad. Section 5 is for firefighting measures. If this caught on fire and you know the chemical, it helps the firefighters to approach a situation correctly without losing life or limb. This can be extremely vital when minutes are in play. Here is Section 6, which is accidental release measures. This helps with more information on how to handle the chemical in case of a spill or accidental release. It also has information about the environment and what needs to be looked for if there is a spill. Section 7 is handling and storage. Don't know how to store this product? This sheet will tell you how. Section 8 is exposure controls and personal protection. This talks about intitulation, respiratory protection, gloves, and other protective equipment. Section 9 is the physical and chemical properties. This section is full of information that can be valuable. It will give you the boiling point, vapor pressure, specific gravity, etc. Section 10 is stability and reactivity, and is another section that will help fire and rescue and the individuals storing the chemical. There are several more sections that are important, but we're going to move on to section 14. Section 14 is transport information. Now, most of us are not in the transporting game, but even carrying it in a service truck or even a plow truck, this information will help even when you're out on the road handling an accident where there is a spill. Next, let's look more into transporting, or better yet, the trucks that are transporting on your roads and going through your work zones. Maintenance is always out on the road at all times. And do we truly know what is driving by us? If we see the diamonds on the truck, do we really know what they mean? Do we even know where to look to get this information? We will by the time we get done. Let's go. As per Title 49, Subtitle B, Chapter 1, Subchapter C, Part 172, Subpart F, each person who offers for transportation or transports any hazardous material subject to this subchapter shall comply with the applicable placarding requirements of this subpart. 1. Infectious substances. 2. Hazardous materials authorized by this subchapter to be offered for transportation as a limited quantity when identified as such on a shipping paper in accordance with Section 172.203B, or when marked as such in accordance with Section 172.315. 3. Hazardous materials prepared in accordance with Section 173.13 of this subchapter. 4. Hazardous materials which are packaged as small quantities under the provision of Section 173.4, 173.4a, 173.4b of this subchapter, and 5. Combustible liquids in non-bulk packagings. In Section 172.504, General Placarding Requirements, it tells the transport company how to placard the item they are transporting. If you continue to read, it will also tell you how to placard for highway, for rail, vessel, and for bulk. There are a lot of rules to placarding a unit, so at another time we can dive deeper. Let us look into some common placards that you might see in Colorado. And since we are landlocked, we won't go into detail about vessels. Here are some common placards you might see traveling the road while you are performing your maintenance duties or just driving around. There are 9 main classes of hazardous materials: explosives, gases, flammable and combustible liquids, flammable materials, oxidizer, organic peroxide, poisons, radioactive, corrosive, and miscellaneous. In addition to numbers, the second most recognizable characteristic of these placards is color. Orange, explosive materials such as dynamite, fireworks, or ammunition. Red, flammable goods such as gasoline, isopropyl alcohol, paint, or acetone. Green, non-flammable substances such as compressed or liquefied gases. Yellow, oxidizers such as ammonium nitrate, potassium nitrate, halogens, or nitric acid. White is poisonous and biohazardous substances such as dyes, acids, aerosols, or medical wastes. Blue, dangerous when wet, such as sodium, calcium, or potassium. Red and white, dangerous when exposed to air, such as aluminum or lithium alkalis, or white phosphorus. Red and white stripes, flammable solids such as matches or magnesium. Red and yellow, organic peroxides such as methyl ethyl ketone peroxide or benzoyl peroxide. Yellow and white, radioactive substances such that are commonly found in medical equipment. White and black, corrosive materials such as batteries, hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, or sodium hydroxide. White and black stripes is miscellaneous dangerous goods such as asbestos or dry ice. Did you know that the routes in green are the nuclear routes here in Colorado? So the placard of radioactive may be more common, but do not despair. We can still be safe. We just need to know how to identify what's going by on the road or if you're responding to an accident. If you're responding to an accident, we need to be extra cautious due to what might be transporting. You pull up to an accident site such as this. You see it's a tanker, but what's it hauling? We don't know, but we have our Emergency Response Guide 2020 book. If you go to page 4, there's a list of things to help us out. As you see, it states that we need to stay clear of vapor, fumes, smoke, and spills. We don't know what they're hauling or if it's been spilled, so we need to be cautious. As maintenance, we will secure the scene to ensure no one else gets hurt. We need to identify the hazard from a distance, such as can we see the placard? If the driver's out walking around, does he have his shipping papers? Sometimes we don't have a lot of information to go off of. We have to assess if there is a fire, spill, or a leak. We need to take into account of the weather conditions and what terrain we are on. Do we have a creek, lake, or irrigation ditch next to the accident site? Is there any wildlife, livestock, or other animals possibly in danger? Has anyone contacted emergency services? You, as maintenance, can advise emergency services of what you see and have found without getting close. One thing to remember when assessing the scene, just because you cannot see or smell vapors does not mean they aren't there. Some gases are colorless and odorless and can be deadly. Let's move into some other information that might help. The ERG 2020 will help us out. Here are 2 pages that can help you identify your hazardous load during a spill. Sometimes getting just a small glimpse can help you determine what you're working with. These 2 pages can help emergency services also with what they're dealing with. Just being able to see a couple colors can narrow down the hazard. If you see orange and black, it could lead you to explosives. Is it just yellow? Now we're looking at a possible oxidizer. So what if you know what they are carrying? You can see the placard or you have the shipping papers in hand from the driver, but you still don't know how dangerous it is. The ERG book will tell you everything you need to know. The ERG book is complete with a couple pages including rail car identification, tractor trailer identification, globally harmonized system of classifications, information on intermodal classifications, and even pipeline information. So let's start with the yellow section of the book. For this example, we're going to use the placard with the 1993 on it, since anyone driving down the road has seen one of these. If you can only see the number on the placard and nothing else, the yellow pages of the ERG book will help. We look up 1993 and see that it can be combustible liquid, flammable cleaning liquid compounds, flammable tree or weed killing compounds, diesel fuel, flammable liquids, or fuel oil. So anyway, you look at it, we have a flammable combustible liquid that's going to make our day just a little spicy. One thing to note on the yellow pages is once you have the ID number, the 1993, it will give you a guide number. We need to flip to the guide, the orange section, to see how to handle this mess. Since we have guide 128 from the yellow pages, we move to the orange pages. Here is when you get all your good information. As you can see, it has potential hazards, public safety, and emergency response. In the potential hazards, the first line states that it is highly flammable and will easily ignite. It also gives health concerns such as inhalation issues, skin issues, and even talks about environmental hazards. In the public safety section, we have that you need to call 911 and then call the emergency number on the shipping papers, if you have them. It tells you what protective clothing you should wear to handle this hazardous situation. It even has evacuation information, which is helpful with the public. The emergency response section you may or may not use, but it'll help. It gives information to the fire crew if it is a spill and or leak and what type of first aid can be given. There are other sections of the book that can be useful. What happens if you don't see the placard and someone says they're carrying diesel fuel, but you don't know the number for it? The blue section of the book comes in handy. Here we found two different diesel fuels, but both have guide 128, even though they have two different numbers of 1993 and 1202. So we would return to guide 128 and proceed to helping out emergency crews until they arrive. But what if you're somewhere without your book, but need the information? You can download it onto your phone. They do have versions for Apple and Android. Never leave home without it. So, in review, hazmat is everywhere around us, on the road, in the office, and even in the home. With a little knowledge we gain today, we can go about our day safe and go home for another day. We just have to remember to not touch anything we don't know. Don't rush into an accident scene until we are sure that we won't endanger ourselves or others, and always keep your head on a swivel. Hazmat can be scary when you don't have the information to make the right decision, but hopefully after today, those decisions will be a little easier. Here are some references for more information about hazmat. Thank you for attending the Colorado LTAP Tuesday Tailgate Talk. Until next time.